So in my videos, we've covered how to calculate your total calories, how to calculate your proteins, fats, and carbs. And just yesterday, I made a video talking about how if you're trying to cultivate the optimal anabolic environment, you have to take into account that there are two levers, not just the one. There's the anti-catabolic system, your recovery mechanism that needs to be satisfied first, and then there's the requirements for anabolism. So now with that in mind, we're gonna generate numbers for an imaginary client that he's a young lifter, male, 154 pounds, so 70 kilograms, and his goal weight is 176 or 80 kilograms. Follow along with me here. So, like I said, current body weight, 154, 70 kilograms, for those of you that are watching internationally. Goal body weight, 176 and 80 kilograms. So, first we have to calculate the calories we're gonna be working with. So we're gonna use the simple times 15, right? So we have goal weight, 176 times 15, so we have 2,640 calories. Now, our first sample with the protein maxed out, we have our body weight of 176 times 2 grams per pound gives us 352 grams of protein, times 4 calories per gram gives us 1,408 calories worth of protein. Now, I usually calculate fats on the low end just because they're not nearly as necessary as a lot of people think. So fats I put at 176 times half a gram per pound, that's 88 grams, at 9 calories per gram gives us 792 calories. All right, so now we have 440 calories remaining. So since carbs are 4 calories per gram, that's easy math, that gives us 110 grams of carbs. So with protein maxed out and with our calorie calculation for his target weight at 2640 calories, we have 352 grams of protein, 88 grams of fats, and 110 grams of carbs. All right, now, sample 2, we're gonna keep his protein at 1 gram per pound, all right? And then, so starting with that, we have 176 times 1, 176 grams, times 4 calories per gram, 704 calories of protein. Fats are the same with 0.5, so 88 grams of fat times 9, 792 calories of fat. Now that gives us 1,144 calories remaining, and I'm gonna put all that into carbs. So 1,144 divided by 4 calories per gram, that's 286 grams of carbs. So in our second example, we have protein at 176, fats at 88, carbs at 286 with the same amount of calories. So max protein versus high carbs. Now, here's a couple reasons why sample 2 is the better option for hypertrophy, counterintuitive to the fact that sample 1 has more protein. First of all, way better recovery. Second one, this is a big one, more energy for training and life, right? And speaking of regular life, number 3 is another big one, more dietary freedom. So if you're trying to max out your protein, if you're trying to go with 352 grams of protein, that means multiple shakes, that means a lot of meat, that means a ton of just food volume. And it's gonna be not the best tasting stuff, especially if we're keeping our fats low, because remember, we're looking for this target calorie count here. We don't wanna spill too high over that because we wanna try to slowly gain mass and not necessarily too much bad weight along the way. And then again, carbs are generally, for point number 4, carbs are generally more palatable than proteins. It's easier to eat more of them and they generally take up less room unless we're talking about high fiber carbs. But you're just likely dealing with less total food volume, again, unless you're getting the majority of your protein from shakes, and that's not the most sustainable lifestyle for most people. So to bring this whole thing full circle, all right, the reason why we start with protein is because we have very clearly defined left and right limits with protein, okay? We don't want to get less than 0.7 and we don't want to go over 2, all right? So we can start at 1 and then see what happens from there. That gives us plenty of wiggle room within our total calculated calorie amount for the other 2 macros. Next, we want to calculate fats because we don't need that many, but we need some. If we start with 0.5 per pound, we'll generally get something, around 100 grams plus or minus, and you will generally just in aggregate get that from eating normal things. You're not going to have to try to add extra fat to your diet, and then you'll have more than enough for your skin and your hair and cell membranes, and you'll probably store a little bit too, because that's just what fat does. Fat goes into fat. And so lastly, with that remainder, we could go all in with the carbs. We could add a little bit of carbs, see how your energy and your recovery is, how your mood is, these kinds of things. If you're sucking, then we just add more carbs, because now we have that wiggle room, because we have enough protein and we've done the bare minimum of fats. And then if you aren't growing, if you need more energy, well, guess what? We can add more and more carbs until we hit that, in this example, the 2640 calorie number, or the 286 grams of carbs in the second example. You see, that's like our buffer for life. When you are within that range fan, that left and right limit of protein requirement, as long as you hit that, so like 0.7 to 1.5-ish, I mean, 2 is kind of really high. And as long as you have the bare minimum of fats, it's like fire and forget. You checked those blocks, you can forget about it now. You're good. You don't need to do any more math or anything. The carbs, though, the carbs are what matter, not just for your goals, but they're what matter for your day-to-day, your sleep quality, how you interact with your friends, family, and coworkers. How well you recover from workout to workout, how much energy you have before your workouts. Like, all of these things that, the ebb and the flow of not just your day, but your week to week, your entire training cycle, it's going to be managed by how you manage the carbs. The carbs are going to have the biggest impact on your fatigue management. So that's why it's important to have as many of them as you need. So inevitably the question is going to be, what about keto? I don't want to make a second video on keto, so I'm just going to include it in this one. Keto is perfectly fine if it's sustainable for you. It is suboptimal to this that I just described. Either sample, the max protein or the protein requirement and high carbs, it's inferior to both of them for the purposes of putting on muscle. So totally fine as a lifestyle thing, but if we're talking about putting on muscle, if we're talking about generally athletics, it's going to be the inferior choice. And so there you have it, folks. 2 separate examples of a 154-pound young lifter trying to get to 176. We calculated his calories. We did one sample with the protein maxed out. We did a second sample with his protein requirements at 1 gram, and then using the remainder to plug in the carbs. And that particular sample, I wholeheartedly believe, both from my 28 years of experience as well as the literature, that is by far the superior option if your goal is to, I don't want to say optimize, but make better choices when it comes to putting on lean mass. Stay in the fight.